Welcome, Fabian Bolin. It's a real honor to have you here. This is actually the first time we meet in person, but I feel I know you like a brother because I've been in your training program and we met maybe 30 times online, but I've never seen you in real life. So that's fantastic. And for those people that don't know Fabian, he's an entrepreneur that started, among other things, the site called War on Cancer, and now has a new project called Sculp that we'll talk more about, I think, during the show. But first, I want to start with your life story because I think it's an amazing story you have, and because you kind of went from cash to soul, and now you're mixing the two, right?
Exactly. First of all, thank you so much, Carl. So happy to see you. It feels like a long digital foreplay that we have been with, and now there's this physical meeting. It feels a lot of buzzing energy there. So very happy to be here, and thank you for the introduction. Yeah, my story has been, as you said, one of going from your typical material ideology, and through a death process, finding a new path for myself and reconnecting with myself, and that's the path I'm currently on. And to give some more color here, I was born and raised here in Stockholm, and upon finishing high school, I was really had no clue, like I think most people don't, when they come out of high school and are supposed to then pretend to know what they want to do. But I went for going into Stockholm School of Economics, where we both studied. And there were two reasons for that. First, I had a vague feeling inside of me, which is probably very real, but I didn't trust it much, that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. But the other one was that it was prestigious, and I knew that it was one of the best schools. And also, I did a selection process where I just eliminated the other options, where I knew immediately that I wouldn't be a good doctor, definitely not a lawyer, and certainly not an engineer. So I said, well, business is the way forward then. So came in there and had some entrepreneurial dreams. It's what can be interesting to mention is, before going into the school, I actually went to study film acting in LA. I come from a background in the creative arts, or my mother used to work at the theater in Dramaten here in Stockholm, and my father was an opera singer. So I've been born and raised in that environment, but I think they try to place me in different creative fields, but for me, it was just like playing ice hockey and then, pursuing business, possibly rebellion. I don't know. And but I went.
I have a similar experience actually, because my father was an art history professor, and when I decided to go into business, he said, "You're going to wake up when you're 40 and realize you sold toothpaste your whole life." Yeah, that's the reaction I got when I went into Stockholm School of Economics. Sorry, that was an aside, but I have a similar experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, mine was relatively supportive in either way, and I went there to study, but then I thought I was going to stay actually, and I called my mother and said, I feel super happy here in LA and I want to stay here. But then I'd also received, she actually called me to say, you've been enrolled to Stockholm School of Economics. And I was like, thinking about skipping that. And she's like, you probably don't want to do that. Just, take a couple of years, get that thing under your belt, and then you can choose to come back if you want to creative arts. And I was like 20 at the time. She's like, you'll be 23 when you're finished. So I was a bit, I would say, resentful towards, I felt like I was ditching my dreams, and going into this boring safeguard. But in the beginning, I actually felt a bit like the black sheep. I felt that I was different from everybody because I had this idea that I would just do it for the sake of, getting it underneath my, like as a security,
Right.
But at some point down the line, just being exposed to the overall attitude of the school, I quickly then began to be formed away from this acting thing and then into to then business and primarily investment banking or management consulting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I have completely the same experience. I had a career as a reporter the first years before Handels, and then I became like, okay, management consulting.
That's the thing. It's like a systemic sort of gentle brainwash that you don't really know happens. And then all of a sudden you're like, how can I ever not want to be an investment banker or management consulting, like marketing? Screw that. Entrepreneur, hippies. And that was the path then. So I went to London, started working there for a few years. Immediately, I sort of like the picture painted by employer branders was quickly gone, and I kind of felt myself plugged into this like internal machinery of just numbers, and yeah, it was basically back to reality and working in finance and what it really is, like exciting, but nowhere near what I thought, what I had in my mind, because also I was always deeply pursuing something that would make me be seen and portrayed as successful or gaining fame or recognition. So when I realized that this is not going to be, I'm not a hot shot here, I quickly began to fade in my interest because the interest was never real. So a few years in, I started feeling really empty. And then I made a big decision away from, I decided to go back to acting. So I resign after 2-3 years, and I believing that, I'm recalling and reclaiming my passion. But ultimately, I know now, and I probably knew then, that I was just replacing one way of trying to get attention with another. So replacing this, like becoming a hedge fund manager, like finance star, to like movie star. So now I was pursuing that path. And I launched myself into that career. And ironically, I had more use of my business knowledge than I had of any creative talent, because I think I saw immediately what the game was all about. It's like, as soon as possible, begin to land good castings. And the way to do that is either, you have a good agent, but also you get to know people. And I started working and I understood immediately also the power of social media. So I began to really launch myself as a brand, and also use my networking skills. Ended up partying with hotshots and worked my way up the ladder. And I think at some point I reached a stage where I got a casting for the Vikings series, and I was like, yeah, it's getting places, and also landed a role in the US, which will enable me to get a role or like a visa to work in the States. And I remember upon walking there, with a visa in my passport, I was like, wow, you can really do this. Yeah. Like, you can really change your life. But in reality, I was heading downwards, like on a downhill slope, where I was, constantly, I noticed this like partying strategy I had was also an escape for me. And I think the escape was due to the fact that it wasn't real for me. There was no real passion in there. And this culminated in the spring of 2015 when I started feeling really tired. And this was, it was not the sort of just like I'm jaded. It was exhaustion. And I had a ticket back to Sweden about a month later. So I decided to just like, okay, I'm just trying to calm myself down and rest until I fly home, and then get some real rest before I do any other thing like going to the US. And this month just kept growing into an exhaustion. And then on the day when I was going to fly back to Stockholm, I wake up and I feel a pain in my chest area. And this pain makes it really troublesome for me to breathe. And I understand that something is off. And I fly back to Stockholm, and upon landing, I meet my parents and I tell them, like, look, I'm struggling to breathe here. And so we go to the hospital, and I'm rushed there into a scanning. I get scanned, and 2 days later, I receive the news that I've been diagnosed with leukemia.
Wow. And what is happening inside you when you get that? What's happening inside you when you get that
that diagnosis?
diagnosis? Exactly.
Well, for me, what happened was a sense of relief. I immediately felt that I could lean back into acceptance.
Wow.
Yeah, and because I knew, especially those moments before I had received more information, for me it was like a certain, like I'm gonna die here now in the next couple of months, I believed, and it was harmony for me and peace.
Wow, that's so interesting that you directly as you received that message, it was harmony. Wow.
Immediately, and I felt myself sort of like coming to a calm place, and upon reflecting upon this moment, I now, or my assumption is that I had lost a lot of my will to live for basically going out in the wrong direction, or the basically not fulfilling or connecting to my inner being for I don't know how long. And I think I was welcoming the news and the event. Because if I look back at my life as well, there was very few moments between 15 and 28 when I was diagnosed where I felt a genuine happiness. You know, it was short-term rush, adrenaline kicks, substance, alcohol, success, but it was never real. Like none of it felt real to me. And I think you can only go as far as long before you actually stop losing like your wish to live.
Wow.
And on the outside, my life looked great. But upon then hearing a few months or just a few seconds after, the doctors then tell me you're looking at a 60-70% chance of surviving, but you're going to have to go through 900 days of chemotherapy.
Wow.
And hearing that, because from first I heard that I was probably going to survive, so I'm rocked out of this peaceful states. It's like, oh no, I kind of enjoyed it there.
Yeah.
And then back into my, productive, like focused mind. And then upon hearing that, because then I realized right away that, okay, my career is ruined. And then a sense of like a death process happened to me because I was so connected to what I was doing. So an immediate then sense of losing everything and falling into the despair of that, and then upon that, then embarking on this, I would say, majestic journey, which is a cancer treatment.
Okay.
Yeah,
majestic journey. I've never heard it described like that.
It's really it's majestic in the form of it's a grand journey. So a grand would say, because you go through it on a psychological, like on a physical level. I mean, I was completely destroyed from all of that, the toxins that I was injecting into my body every day. So I lost all of my weight. I lost 20 kilos in 3 weeks. Looked like like skin and bones. I lost all my hair, and I witnessed my gradual death process, or just like disappearance of myself, whilst at the same time psychologically you go through a maybe even deeper experience, like facing death. Like the first 2 months, I didn't know whether I was going to survive or not, because in the beginning, it's all about whether the treatment actually hits. Like if the treatment works, you're standing a good chance of surviving. But it can be that it doesn't. And the first, I think it was 8 weeks or something, you're just there, going through a strange experience, and especially you don't know whether you're gonna die or not. And it's like it's like the real death. I mean, that's what's so powerful about it.
That must be, you might have died before you die, which is like the ultimate spiritual experience in one way.
I think that's what it is. And also everybody dies every 7 years, because every cell in your body is replenished, replaced in 7 years time. And especially if you inject tons and liters and liters and liters of cell chemotherapy as well, I think you speed up that process. So I think literally what was happening was that real death of a lot of what was me. But
and what, I mean, Because then, I mean, you had 8 weeks where you didn't know if you're going to live or die, right? And you had to kind of assume that you were going to die in one way. I mean, and how did you develop in those 8 weeks?
Well, many things happened there during those weeks. I think also it got me for the first time started on the inner development journey or personal development journey. And for me, it happened through, I had 2 mystical experiences.
Okay.
Yeah. So during those, the phase of going through it, I mean, maybe a week in or 2 weeks in, I wake up one night and I feel wide awake. I mean, I'm not sure if I was, but I feel wide awake and I sit up. And in front of my bed, I see a burning cross. It's like maybe 1.5 meters tall. Like it's just hanging in the air in front of me. And I sit there and I look at it. And it's like, trying to shake. And it's there. It's right there in front of me. And maybe the next nights or a few days later, a few nights later, I see, I wake up again and there's a nun standing to the left of my, down by the bottom of the bed, crying and praying. And I have those 2 experiences. And I was like, what is that? What was that I just experienced? And upon, you can never have those, they get installed in you as truths. And it opened up my world then, and understanding that, okay, there's much more to explore than what I see and understand here. So those things got me started on the inner development journey. And at the same time, out here in this world, I shared my journey about cancer openly in a blog. I was very used to writing on social media, and I kind of just continued to share that now I've been diagnosed with cancer. And this first post got viral at the time. It received 13,000 shares and or 27,000 likes, and it was seen by millions of people. And through that, it came large media coverage as well. So I was writing and sharing my story through cancer in a blog, and it got me hooked and connected to that sense of purpose, because immediately upon starting to write, I also understood that writing helped others. That was also the first time that I connected to a sense of making a real impact for someone else. And upon reading many of the messages, there were thousands of messages from people who also went through cancer, who thanked me for opening up about my experience and how much it helped them. That became had a very healing impact for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah.
It was an amazing experience, and it kept me going. I felt I had a sense of purpose, and it was probably a sense of escapism there as well, not being able to fully connect to the trauma that is going through.
Don't be hard on yourself, I think.
Yeah, but or like a good outlet, like something to focus on. And so I begin then to, upon about a year after I'd been diagnosed, I decided to begin to conceptualize what it is that I'm doing, because I understand that stories have the power to heal. And there are a lot of people out there who are going through cancer. Every year in Sweden, it's like 60,000 people being diagnosed here in Sweden alone. So it's a massive, massive illness that affects everybody. So I decided to build a company focused on helping people affected by cancer to share their stories and connect, which gradually took the form or the product direction of like an Instagram for cancer, basically. At first, it started off like a blog portal thing, but the blog portal, like blogs were about to fade out and being completely consumed by Instagram and like social media platforms. So we quickly said, no, let's change the direction and basically make an Instagram for cancer. And that soon then took on the form where we started building, and we also understood that there is an immense value in the patient-reported data aspects. So
Okay.
the entire industry around a cancer patient, you have, med tech, precision medicine, academia, healthcare, big pharma, and all of the, the different institutions that work to treat and help cancer patients have basically no clue about what a patient is going through because they're so difficult to get data, like serious big data to understand, because the only way to get data is usually through patient organizations who are not necessarily the most efficient when it comes to, they don't have like a structure.
So you were able to monetize the whole thing.
That was the business model. So we built it and said, whoever wants to help work with us need to actually explain what it is that they're trying to do. And then they can come to us with a set of questions, and we will then transparently show that to our members, and whoever wants to answer will answer. So we said that actually knowing that you're helping is one of the biggest effects that a cancer patient can have on his or her own mental health. So by feeling that, I can answer here and give my data for research, it's also a boost in their mental health. So we saw that as a beautiful win-win-win situation.
So and I understand you did that for 7 years, right? And then suddenly one day you felt that it wasn't the right thing for you anymore. What happened?
Well, upon maybe year 5 into it, and during the years would also, it's been growing and in number.
It was immensely successful. So it was a great success, but you somehow wanted to quit.
Yes, I began to feel about 4 or 5 years into it that it was time for me to leave, and it was a lot connected to actually. It was connected to me needing to step away from my personal experience with cancer, because due to the nature of the way we built it, the company, I see that a company can be built in different ways, where a company, I would say the definition of a company is really a system that you build that a founder can actually walk away from a year, coming back to it and finding it more lucrative or more profitable or just better, but many companies, especially startups, even though they're capital backed, are actually founder reliant. And I noticed that we had built it around my story a lot. So upon the last, I've been probably sharing on like hundreds of different stages, like in 200-300 media articles, podcasts. I was over and over and over and over again, just going through my journey through cancer in depth, meeting other people connected to cancer. At some point, I began to feel like I feel so complete with my connection to cancer. Like I don't want to talk about that anymore. It feels like if it's like someone would ask you, like, why don't you talk to me about your graduation, like studenten, and just like over and over and over every day.
Yeah.
Like the time it's like, it was like 20 years ago. Like, can we talk about something else? And the more time passed,
and now I'm getting to talk to you about it again.
Yeah. Well, it was a long time ago now. I spoke about it.
But because I remember also you saying to me that, and that's what I found really interesting, is that the title of your company was War on Cancer, right?
Yes.
And that's what kind of the fight against cancer. And that's what I hear. I have actually a really close work associate that just got cancer. But to me, it's like, and that was interesting. I think the cancer is probably telling us something also, right?
Completely. I normally don't talk so much about this, so I'm happy that you bring it up. And so the name of the blog was Fabian Bolin's War on Cancer. So the company became named War on Cancer. About 1 year into it, I said this is the wrong name, because cancer is not the problem. Cancer is today believed to be this alien invasion from somewhere, like randomly popping up, and it's people are super unlucky, and because I did a lot of inner work and began reading upon the nature of reality and understanding. Ultimately, I saw that the body, or that is my belief system, that the body is signaling. The body is signaling that something is off, that you need to look at. And you can go deeper with this as well, to look at where you get your cancer, is connected to different, grief that you have or different trauma that you have. If you get cancer in your blood, it's very much connected to that you feel like your whole life is you're off, basically, because the blood is very, it's the whole system. And I felt, but the whole world, I felt like the whole world was against me, including many people that I worked with, because everybody is, everybody believes, and especially the way that cancer is being marketed by patient organizations and charity organizations. It's like the war, the battle, whereas I was sort of immediately upon, almost from like a couple of weeks in, I was like, this is the most important thing that's ever happened to me. Like, thank God I was diagnosed with cancer, because I would have probably like perished in some other way, or just gone on to live a completely miserable life, stretched out into eternity until I died. But that was my wake-up call, the cancer, and I was so deeply, and I am deeply thankful for it. It was my phoenix journey. I died and was reborn, and this was like what I was communicating everywhere. And clever people, they said, like, this should be called Peace with Cancer. That's the name of the company. I was like, yeah, but it just doesn't sound good. We need to have something that has a better like brand name connected to it. But I was at the same time felt I had a difficulty, because in reality, to make that shift, you can't just say, you need to go deep with people to actually have people begin to understand how everything works together, and it goes against the norm. So I had a difficult time there, and I felt that I was waging a battle around this thing, and I felt that personally I felt that I had outgrown it. So that's also another reason which I almost never share with why I actually also had to leave. I felt that it was not connected to my own core values anymore. And so I also said, and upon leaving, actually, that they proceeded to start changing a name to Hey Helix instead. But I left there, and I knew that I had to leave about around 2020. But it took me 2 years to actually leave, because I was fighting against it, because I had this plan and I felt like we were just getting started, and that turned into quite a lot of misery for me, because you fight something and because it's difficult to work. I mean, being an entrepreneur, you understand as well, it takes your whole soul, like to really go, and you invest so much into it. And if you don't have that inner fire, wherever that fire is coming from, can be from a shadow, a mission, or it can be just greed, fame, and glory, or it can be your authentic, like your real fire. No matter, like they're both fires. But I felt I had no fire. Because I had outgrown this like need for greed, or like this need for a thing gradually, and I also didn't feel connected to it. So it took me two more years to actually to leave it.
And what kind of pain did you experience because of that? What was? You said you had 2 years of pain. What type of pain was that?
Well, the first pain I felt was that, which is a sort of like a dragged out pain, which is not being true to yourself, and feeling that you are. For me, especially since I've been I feel like I've been reborn. I gain a second chance in life. So for me now, life is so much more important to actually live it and experience it fully. Where and to then not follow that, that when you have to leave, I felt like I was being a traitor towards myself. But then also the pain of being energetically drained. Because there was no fire. So for me to work, all of a sudden, it became more about difficulty to produce. I lost a lot of creativity. I lost a lot of smartness. And I lost, I think, a lot of my competence or like my leadership also evaporated, because I wasn't able to be a leader for the team, because I wasn't believing in it, and I wasn't believing in myself anymore, because I knew I wasn't going to be there, or wasn't supposed to be there. So many of those pains and judging and and then the constant conflict inside because my ego still wanted to stay,
Yeah.
and said, give it a few more years and see what happens.
It's hard to let go of an identity.
Identity, yeah.
I'm curious also, I mean, because I'm curious in your spiritual development, right? And it looks like suddenly we're like, I want to live life. I want to experience life. I want to be. Can you tell what's your spiritual kind of worldview right now? I mean, how do you see how has that shifted from where you were before cancer?
It's really completely shifted my viewpoint of life. Today I view life as a saga. I feel that I feel connected to an adventure where with ups and downs and challenges, and I feel fused with a sense of fire inside of me and passion and commitment. And I also experience a lot more about life. I actually see people. I understand. I'm very much more here in the now than ever before. And this was ultimately, I mean, it's such a vast concept, right? And what it really is. There are so many ways to talk about it. But for me, it was a gradual awakening process that I'm still on and still will be for the rest of my life. But that first took the route of learning about meditation and I did a lot of like mental spirituality in the beginning, I would say, or like mentally almost trying to tame enlightenment. I was like, I'm gonna understand this, and then just reading Carl Jung and going deep into this and listening to podcasts and thinking I got it, and then slowly upon digging more into it, seeing that much of my life was built, I saw that I'm fragmented inside. I am basically shackles. My personality is a trauma response. Like everything I am is basically a response of different traumas that I've experienced and also my inner conditioning. So then became the big work, which is, I would say, which is something I feel like it's only now I feel I'm beginning to emerge out of it, where it's about reconnecting with your traumas. What actually went down when I grew up. What was my upbringing like? What was my relationship to my parents? Specific things that happened to me during my lifetime, and gradually connecting more and more and more and more with those, and bringing them home, really, and slowly also becoming more, I would say, expansive in the way that I was, from meditation and learning about breath work and these things, gradually to begin with retreats, then plant medicine. I went to Peru to work with a shaman there, a few ayahuasca retreats, and slowly but surely really connecting deeper and deeper into what this thing seems to be about.
Which you mean life?
Life,
right?
What it is
the universe, or
yeah, and today I see, spirituality is used as a term to, often I think wrongly used as a term to portray personal development. And a lot of people talk about spirituality as, are you into spirituality, or are you spiritual? And I think it's an easy shortcut to just, people understand vaguely. But I think there's also danger in explaining it in that way, rather than saying that spirituality is the fourth dimension of the human existence, whereas you have the physical dimension, your emotional, your mental, and your spiritual dimension. And those four together make up who you are. And working with all elements of yourself, learning to master all elements of yourself is something that we are working a lot with today in Sculp, and which is really what got me slowly but surely to understand that my path from after, it took me some time to find the next way. Upon resigning and I went for a few months away to South America and well, actually Central America, and had in hindsight, like a rather stereotypical, tech entrepreneur, having to leave to find yourself and then becoming
and going ayahuasca retreat.
Exactly. And then, then also, I think I've had my biggest impact actually came from a darkness retreat. So I went to Guatemala for 7 nights and 7 days. I was in a completely dark room. And yeah, that was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had, and very profound. And in that, I received, I would say, my next step, which was to work with men and to use my knowledge of building tech, entrepreneurship, and also understanding of the business world, and merge that with my newfound passion, which was personal development.
I like it because I'm actually also a participant in your program, Sculp men's program. So I'm, and I love it. It's such a interesting combination of spirituality on the one hand, and then also like biohacks and a little bit of, so it's like mystical stuff and it's like science and it's like all baked together. So can you tell me a little bit about how did you come up with that? Yeah, it's like you call it, I think you call it mystical, practical mysticism or something. How did you come up with this concept and how did it kind of gel together?
Well, it was upon practical mysticism, exactly. It was upon doing a lot of, me and the other founders have been working now. It's not just me. It's also Daniel Mueller, who has long experience with personal coaching and the founder of Hale Rep Center, and also Sami Hakala, who is mobility and movement experts, and with more than 20 years of experience. So together we have had a lot of experience in this field, and we have tried a lot of things, and especially upon getting in touch with men's work, which I did the first time through a men's circle that met on a weekly basis, but then through Mankind Project, where I had a weekend retreat, which is so explosive, with only men working together, holding each other and really helping each other like a band of brothers, that I understood the potential of men's work. And I had also one of my it was so strong, the energy when men came together. But I also saw the, I would say, how fragmented the men's work world was. I mean, the only way that you can get in touch with this was various retreats like that. A weekend you go away and, you have your experience and then you come back to life. And for me, it felt like, okay, but where do I take this?
How do I integrate?
Exactly. And I quickly felt there needs to be more in this space. Also, I noticed that a lot of the other alternatives out there on personal development seem, is built for women, by women, or both, due to the way it's being communicated. And the way that most of the retreats I noticed was framed, which is very much connected to, embracing, connect to yourself, vulnerability, acceptance, surrender, love, all of these beautiful concepts. But I also felt that there was something missing, which is direction, vision, purpose, building, protecting, providing. Those words.
The male part of the masculine.
Exactly.
Right.
Never mentioned. Almost never mentioned at retreats, and it's because I don't think the typical customer. I mean, looking from the market perspective, 80 or 90% in personal development are women, like the customer. And then you have 10% who are men. And so we said there's space here for something to create. So what we wanted to create was something with a long period of time for men to actually be doing the work together for a long time. It takes 66 days to form a habit. So we landed upon building a 60-day training online. It's the only way you can get a bunch of men together every day for 60 days. So we call it 100-hour core enrichment. And ultimately what it is a leadership program. It's a program where we help men to first in level 1, so go through 3 levels. So the first level is really about learning to lead yourself. And how, like you say, the way it's been built is really for you to be able to get a full map of everything that you have around you, as in we look first at your 7 inner dimensions. We break the human experience into 7 inner dimensions, where we learn and look first deep within. How do you cultivate mastery connected to your 7 inner dimensions? And then at the same time, we look out the 8 outer aspects of wealth. So first you have the inner dimensions inside, and then we look at the 8 outer aspects of wealth. And those are first, and these are then the 8 weeks that we go through the program. The first is...
Exactly. And it's really interesting. What I think is really interesting is that it's really a spiritual program. I mean, a lot of, and a lot of it's, about how to connect to the soul, how to connect to your inner dimension. But what I think is interesting is that you say also basically that how can we measure how connected you are to your soul?
Yeah.
Which is like, okay, but if I spend, 20 hours, per month connecting to my soul, I should be more connected to it by the end of that month, right? So it's an interesting way of, you are very spiritual and you approach these kind of fuzzy topics, but in a kind of a little bit scientific or numbers, or should I maybe say kind of male way, in a way.
It's in a male way, and in a way that we believe that men function, and the way that men like to work together, which is slightly more action oriented. As in, you look at your life, and everybody, upon joining the program, we first have a deep interview with people to understand their personal pain points, pains and dreams. Then you do a self-assessment where you actually assess yourself first in your connection to your inner 7 dimensions, but also your outer life. And I can just name them so that the listeners get a full understanding of. So the weeks we go through is first your inner 7, the inner self mastery, the first week, where we actually teach about physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual intelligence. How do I cultivate mastery around all of my dimensions? And week 2, we look at relationships. How do I build, maintain, and grow deep relationships in my life, not only to my friends around me, but to my partnership or my partner as well. And we then look at fitness and longevity. So we do a deep dive into the physical domain here and say, how can I live until I live a good, long, and healthy life, looking into diets, nutrition, exercise, sleep, detox, basically trying to give the best, to the best of our ability, a download of what's currently the best knowledge out there. It's a distillation process that we've been doing over many years that we then bring into here. And then we look at week 4, we go into purpose, mission, and career. Have I really connected to my real sense of purpose? Do I know why I'm doing what I'm doing? Or do I lack actual direction in life? Okay, then we look at how do I find that direction? Week 5, we look into economics. How can I build freedom for myself? How is my cash flow being generated? What does freedom mean to me? And possibly also the most important thing there is, what is my relationship to money? And then going into mentors, where we learn how to mentor each other. Being a mentor and also being mentored, super important. Week 7 is lifestyle, building it all together. Now we know from all the 6 weeks, what is the life I want to lead? Do I want to lead a life of adventure, excitement, feeling healthy, thriving? What is my definition of a great life? And then seeing, where am I today? And then last but not least, service in the end, connecting all of this to a sense of serving something larger. So these are then, and upon then, basically for every week, it's really about, okay, where is my personal pain points? Because what we cover with this inner connection and all the other layers is basically everything in life. we haven't found an area which haven't been covered, meaning this is a place to go to actually assess and say, what's going on? Like, where am I great? Where am I sucking? And being able to then look at this area and say, okay, what am I going to do about it?
No, I think it's really interesting, and I really like the program, so I can highly recommend to the listeners to look at it. What I think is interesting is that what gets me going is also that it's a way of getting men to really show up, right? And I think that's something we really need, right? We need men to go deep inside themselves, because traditionally men haven't really had the possibility to do that, or it hasn't really been accepted for men to go to the spiritual path in a way. But it's interesting to, and I think that it's kind of, if you're successful with a company, could be a scalable way of increasing consciousness for a lot of people.
Yeah,
which I think would be a fantastic thing. But one issue with it, because I had Alexander Bard here just earlier, and he's basically said anybody who's doing any spirituality and charging money is a charlatan. He said, never mix. The church, it should always be for free. Nobody. But you're actually building a business, getting people to be more spiritual. Do you see? Is there anything? Do you see problems with that, or I mean, being like mixing the cash and soul, so to speak?
Yeah, I know it's one of the questions that is not often coming. I personally see. I mean, it really depends on what your attitude to money is and what it represents. I mean, we live in a world today where it's built, and it's currently built around the monetary model, meaning in order to actually be able to commit to something, there needs to be a certain energy in the form of money connected towards it. A lot of the institutions today in the world of spirituality they have different models that are either, charitable, or asking there's this model where it's like pay whatever you think is worth, which I think might be a great model, possibly something to look into in the future. And there's, but then also looking at that, what actually happens is that they become side projects for people, because the life is life, and life demands of every person to find a way to, that is really what I see what money is. And by actually being able to work with this properly full-time is also one of the reasons that we've been able to grow this at the pace we have. Is we're actually able to put real effort, monetary effort, into creating this. And this is also one of the purposes here, to actually build something that grows and then grow into something that can help not only hundreds of people or thousands, but possibly millions of people. And that just requires muscle. Secondly, something that I have seen, and I think one is very important, is also because when a person invests money to a program, it does something to the person as well. It's the person saying, here, I have worked to earn this. So this is my stored energy. I give this to you now. First, because I want this help, but also I believe in you. So I think there's a beautiful also way of, and I hope that every client coming in or every person joining the programs also feels that, you're not only supporting yourself, you're supporting an organization that's going to help thousands of men into the future with this. And that is also something very powerful in that. So I believe it comes down to your own attitude towards money and how you see that. I have no problems with it. I think that it should be, and it's also weird because, I can go out and create a company which uses basically slave labor and creates these different assets that I sell via e-commerce, and I get praised. Then for people that do good things, it was also almost the same thing when we work sometimes with the cancer. It's like, how do you feel about making money on cancer? And I was like, if anything, we should make the most money, right?
Right.
Like whoever does something fucking good should be the ones to be rewarded. But we have a weird way about that.
It's money is dirty in one way. I mean, and you shouldn't contaminate like the nice woozy kind of spiritual thing with money, right? That's at least the Bard view a little bit, right? But I tend to agree with you that to build anything that's going to be scalable, you need for it to make money, right? You need people to invest money in it. So, yeah,
invest and a lot of it really, because like you say, and this is also we are hoping with this basically this type of training is something that we know that every man would benefit from. I mean, it's something that should hopefully in the future be replacing much of what the school system is. I'm not saying that Sculp should become the new school, but what we're teaching should be what is going into a school system.
100%, yeah.
Exactly. So this is something that we're hoping to be able to roll out. I mean, we're soon going to be launching a few more time zones. So we're going to be operating these trainings. Right now, the training is the Central European time zone. So we start at 5 a.m. in the morning and work until 6:30. So it's 1.5 hours every day for 60 days. But soon we want to open another time zone, which is the US, to be able to run. And ultimately, which is why something where you tapped into scalability as well. So obviously, one of the key components is being able to actually be there and facilitate these type of containers as a lead trainer. So we said right away, like there's going to be a limit to how many we can have if it's only going to be us. So what is it then that we can do? Well, we can train others to become leaders. And I think really that's what real leadership is about, that you train people to train others to become leaders. Once you have trained someone and trained them good enough, you can begin to scale. So what we're seeing here is that upon those, like if you, the training is, the first level is lead yourself. And the second training, you begin to look at leading others. And the first layer of the level 2 is called receptive leadership, where it's really about building trusts and working with leadership in a way that is often forgotten, because a lot of people want to be the commander, do this and do that. Where if you understand that first you need trusts, and you do that by see people, listen, and make people feel seen and heard. So,
no, but I think it'd be really interesting to see how you can scale the model.
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, the difficult part is always like in you and Daniel and Sami are incredible people. So can you scale yourself and make these other people as good as you are? But I'm interested also, maybe to switch the topic a little bit, is to see, because cash and soul, ultimately for me, I mean, in one way, I love capitalism, and I've been working, and since the last 20 years, I've been trying to make capitalism a force for good somehow, right? Yeah. And I started first doing that by, investing in environmental technology, trying to save, the world from climate change. But more and more, I've come to believe that we need a shift in. It's not enough. I mean, we know how to solve, the climate crisis. Technically, it's not a problem. We have the money. I mean, it's going to be expensive, but it's not going to be prohibitively expensive. But we're still not doing it, right? And that's for me, how the hell can we make capitalism a force for good instead of, that we're grabbing the last percentage always, right? And I'd like to have your reflections on, how could we bring about that change in capitalism?
I like where you're going with this, and I think it's one of the most important pieces of the puzzle right now. And I personally believe that the world of personal development needs to shape up. Seriously. Like there's enough of dancing, going to Bali and dancing in the sunset. Like the society is here right now. And I think what is needed is people who are grounded in their personal development work and are looking for ways to actually make real lasting change. for good. We need more people, and I say people like yourself coming into this, people that understand business, understand entrepreneurship, and also understand how the world works. And I would say what people call the matrix world. And more people coming in there is a first layer. So I'm very welcoming to a new form of person entering with exactly mature personal development. But I think it's not as far away as we believe, or one can. If you think about it, it's like, oh, how are we ever going to get out of this? Sometimes it feels like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like how this mess, like, is someone even controlling it? And it feels like chaos. But I think as it's really a shift mindset, and it doesn't take that much to shift the mindset, where you just shift back to value first, profit second. That's really all that is needed. I mean, business and entrepreneurship and I think profit should come as a result of value. And if we could just reinstall that, the world would solve itself. It would just naturally, and I'm seeing that it's happening. I'm sure, obviously you know about impact capitalism and the hype around impact companies and Norskin and all of that. Something is already happening. Something is already happening, definitely, and that is driving a change. But it will also take. It's like reforming companies is like, for many people say that a lot of companies just need to disappear, for this to even function. I don't think that's the case. I think most companies can actually reform themselves and make this transition. And I had a discussion with a friend, like another entrepreneur friend, who's in e-commerce, and we're talking about his company, because he's also ex Stockholm School of Economics, and been in, like, he was directly into the entrepreneurial world, and and he's been kind of, upon doing his inner journey, he's been waking up to realize that, many of his companies have not been built from a place of love, but just from a place of fear, and feeling very, demotivated by that, or just discouraged. But then now, upon just doing the work, he's beginning to shift his companies. So one of his companies they sell watches. And he said, what if we, instead of buying new stuff from China, from now on only buy recycled stuff? So our watches then are produced only from recycled stuff, and all of a sudden, buying a watch makes a good value in the world. And it's only that shift, and he started looking at it, and it's like, it's even cheaper.
Okay, that's good.
Than fucking China.
Yeah,
it's just that nobody looks there.
But the interesting thing is that because, like, most of the successful people in the world, right, or the people that are driven to success, are driven by trauma and fear, and then you also get the feeling that once they're rid of that trauma and fear, they just want to sit in Bali and dance around, or whatever, and meditate, right? How do we get people to be both wanting to do something in the world and, do it from a place of love, connection, what we're talking about here?
Yeah, I talked to my wife about this morning, actually, about we were saying, we've been kind of planning to, now she's pregnant, so we're planning to go to Bali this year, and she's also always had a bit of a, like, not feeling super excited about it, and it feels like there's a lot of people there that are exactly in that very, very early phase of finding out something more to life, and it's this massive excitement thing, and in that excitement thing there's also a phase, I believe, which is like, oh, I'm just gonna skip everything, screw that nonsense, exit the matrix and all of that, and you have your phase, and some stay in that phase, but for many, I hope, at least I've had that experience, because I was also like that. It's like, I don't want to work with this anymore. I don't want to do business. Uh, and in that process, I gained a sense of perspective. But ultimately, I think if you're serious about your personal development, ultimately you want to help the world to the best of your ability, and you're not going to help the world in Bali. Like those people are there. That's not where it's needed. You need to go where it's the most dense. Go back into reality. And that's where you want to be, and that's where you want to actually make your impact. So I see their needs as probably a necessary phase, which also I believe is very much connected to a lot of narcissistic behavior and elitist thinking, where you feel like you have awakened and you look back at the sheep who has not, and you kind of almost like there's this like, you almost you indulge yourself in this like air of superiority in those circles for some time. You speak about all of these like amazing concepts, and what you do, you realize you're just bringing your wound into the new thing, which is now you're no longer this ego driven materialistic thing, but now you're this, I'm going to be an enlightened man or a woman.
Now, what I like about your approach, and something I learned is the idea of having, the shadow mission and your normal mission, right? And I think that's such a powerful idea, because I started out doing stuff exactly like you, mainly to gain recognition, right? I wanted everybody to say Carl Hall was a great guy, right? And then at some point I realized, when my whole career got screwed, I realized maybe that wasn't so important after all. And then there's a phase there where you just, but what I like about your concept is that, or the concept of a shadow mission is that you're allowed to indulge also in, I will always have that need for recognition. That's always going to be there, right? At the same time, I want to save the world or do something good. And you're allowed to be both dark and light at the same time. And I think, to me, also the realization that life is always going to be pain. It's always, you're never going to be perfect. So, tonight I've done a lot of work on myself, but still I have bad sleep, and I'm not the nice guy the day after. So that's always going to be the case, right? I'm never going to be perfect. And I like your approach, that you're actually allowing for that, both of those, the dark and the light, right?
I'm really trying to cultivate a lot of darkness inside of me, and really, or cultivate connection with it, because I think it's insanity to believe that you can only be light, and believing that you are. There's a lot of that in the world as well, of personal development. It's like a pursuit of light, being this wise king, and everybody wants to become this essence of perfection and consciousness, whereas in reality, it's they hide, or they don't want to acknowledge a lot of their darkness. And I began to really dance with my dark elements, and seeing so much power in them as well. I mean, my personal darkness, or my shadow, I call it Fabian Lannister, because I think it resembles the same archetype of Jaime Lannister in Game of Thrones.
At least you have both arms.
Oh yeah, exactly. But it's just it's a person that is constantly in search for glory, and wanting to be on stage, and wanting to be beautiful, and it's like almost like a very vain person with a sense of disdain for others, and the archetypical journey of Jaime Lannister is that gradually over the lifetime, through different miseries and suffering and crises, he finds himself. And I believe in those fantasy movies and books, they actually portray real archetypes, and I can connect myself a lot to that archetype. So knowing this, I then know, and I talk about it often to others around me, so that they can check me as well. So they know that, if I grab different opportunities to shine, and I can use that in to my advantage also, or to actually as a benefit, because it's taught me then to grab attention to basically seduce an audience. And it's something because I do that because I want their attention. And now I can use that skill, that seduction skill, for good. So, and that is riding your shadow or riding the dragon, where you begin to become friends. And then I know the bad aspects of it, which is some disdain for, I'm aware of but I pick out the pieces of the shadow, which is actually fruitful. And upon control, or being the master of the shadow, fusing that with my personality and becoming more as a result.
I love the likeness to Jamie Lannister. I mean, you're also tall and good looking like him. So, and I foresee actually in the future you get a lot of glory with Sculp. I think you guys have an amazing concept, and I'm really interested to see how that will play out. And I think it's a really interesting way of blending business and spirituality, which I really think we need in this world. So, Fabian, thank you so much for joining the podcast. Really nice to meet you in person after all these online, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Carl. It's been so wonderful to meet you in person. And the beautiful thing is that I'll see you tomorrow at 5 a.m.
Yeah, that's true.
At Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you.